Hey folks, if you follow the show or you've read the book, you've probably heard of Seneca Leaders, a unique one-day experience that helps people transform mindsets and shape new behaviors. I'm so proud to host and facilitate these sessions alongside my co-authors and colleagues, and I would really love for you to come and join us. Learn more about it by visiting senecaleaders.com. And now, on with the show.
I could have said, no, I'm fine. I'm a good leader. I'm a good human. I recognize that I had these unconscious biases that were like sitting there right there that became like the top priority. Like all of a sudden, this unconscious shortcoming ended up being so conscious that I had to do something about it.
Hello and welcome to Love as a Business Strategy, a podcast that brings humanity to the workplace. We're here to talk about business, but we want to tackle topics that most business leaders shy away from. We believe that humanity and love should be at the center of every successful business. I'm your host, Jeff Ma, and as always, I'm here to have conversations and hear stories from real people about real businesses and real stories. My guest today is Darrin Tulley, an accomplished financial services executive, motivational speaker, the author of Live Your Possible, and host of the Live Your Possible podcast. Darrin has a passion for transforming business performance through positive change with a pragmatic, data-informed, empathetic, and servant leadership style. He's known for his remarkable ability to build and lead high-performing teams that exceed customer and shareholder expectations, while also inspiring an authentic team-first culture. Darrin, how are you today? What's going on, man?
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff. I'm excited to be here. Doing great. Excited to chat about love and a bunch of other fun topics.
I love it. I almost misread your title, Love Your Possible, naturally, just the L, the V, and the E. But I love everything that Ignite Happy, Live Your Possible, all these things, they align so well, which always makes for interesting conversation, because I know you're going to come from a slightly different angle, slightly different perspective. And I can't wait to dive into that today.
Yeah, the goal is, I guess, we all want to love our possible too. So I like the connection. I think it was a natural slip.
Look at this synergy coming in right away. Let me start with you though. Let me start with just Darrin. What is your story that brought you to, like, what you're doing today is a passion driven thing. So where did this passion come from? What brought you to this point?
Well, I feel like I've had it my whole life, and the way I started in my early days, and then I woke up about 7 years ago, and I realized I wasn't being that person. I wasn't being my authentic self that I came into this world with, and I was actually at a diversity and inclusion event where I actually had an awakening. I wasn't being the leader I thought I was. I wasn't the person or human being. You talk about humanity and love in the workplace. I wasn't giving it. I was focusing on results, essentially pushing people away, and people that had differences in myself. And I had an awakening where I needed to open my eyes, open my heart in a different way. And I needed to change my purpose. I needed to be intentional. And through that journey, I also had a light up moment where I saw something really special with my daughter. And it was this logo, actually, the logo of my book, the logo of my podcast is One Eyed Smile. And it was on the back of a watermelon Italian ice lid. And this Italian ice lid was something that my daughter had put to the side of the table. She was having this Italian ice because she was enjoying a treat after doing her homework really well, which sounds silly. Yeah, what ended up being this most incredible moment turned the kid inside of me to come out and shine. My daughter was shining. I was shining, because what happened is this Italian ice lid had this one-eyed smile on the back of it. And I was looking for differences in the world. I was accepting my own silliness. And when we saw this, we both kind of blew up with joy. And that's what sparked my journey. It's this combination of, I had to come to this realization I wasn't living out my best life. And I realized, seeing this girl light up, and then I lit up, that I need to do better in the world. I need to bring more joy, more intentionally from within me, and then also connect it to other folks in my life, no matter where they're from or what they look like. And I started to write some stories around this. and I put a business plan together. It ended up being a book. I started this company called Ignite Happy. And the last 6, 7 years have been so amazing, so transformative. And the connections that I've been making that are rooted in joy and inclusion and love are really opening up possibilities for me and everybody around me.
I I I find that story so important to me personally. I think I talk about love so much, and I talk about love in business and work and all the benefits, all the team chemistry and high performance and all these things. And I don't feel like I talk enough about just joy, about this side effect of love that's just happiness. I think
Mhm.
that should be the first thing on my bullet list. And somehow I'm always stuck in the weeds of how it'll help the business and leaders, and they're all important. But I love this reminder, man. I love that joy. I mean, let's not forget about that, right?
Yeah, it's really the core. I feel like because one of those things is I realized is I was welcoming the world in, and my purpose at the time was to bring out the best in people all around me, and I would do that with levels of love and genuine interest and care. Yet I was doing that for people that were in a bubble like me and similar to me. So I kind of talk about this as a bubble of sameness. And when I was going through this immersion event, I recognized that I wasn't aware of the injustices and the things that were going on in the world the way I should. And I wasn't caring, or wasn't, maybe I was just ignorant to what was happening, Jeff. And it was terrifying. And I had shame for myself not recognizing what was going on. And I needed to make a change. And what I realized is that I needed to change my purpose, to really look at the light that's inside of all of us. Because I believe there's a beautiful light inside of all of us. You know what's filled in that light? It is happiness. It is love. It is like wonderment. It's like the childlike ways that are inside all of us that are waiting to come out and unleash. And that's what happened when I went through this journey. Is I could have said, no, I'm fine. I'm a good leader. I'm a good human. I recognized that I had these unconscious biases that were like sitting there right there that became like the top priority. Like all of a sudden, this unconscious shortcoming ended up being so conscious that I had to do something about it. And I could have hidden behind self-preservation, or I could have said, "Oh, I don't want to give up what I have as far as opportunities." But I had a greater love for what was in front of me, the people that were in front of me, the people that I was pushing away, possibilities. I was pushing away joy and possibilities for other people, and I needed to change, and I did, and that's what sparked this whole journey. And this logo, this one-eyed smile, represents so many things. It represents joy and happiness, as you could see. It also is pretty unique. It's a unique smile. It's a one-eyed smile, and we're all unique. We're all different, and this reminds me to make sure we're all looking at each other and embracing and accepting our own differences and the differences of other people. When we do that, we could truly look at the light that's inside of all of us waiting to unleash and actually try to help make it brighter. And when we do that, that to me is having love and genuine care for other human beings. That's humanity at work.
Mm, I love that. And I want to help the audience connect a little bit. What does it mean when you say live your possible? Like more specifically, what is the possible? What is my possible? What is your possible?
It's, your possible is different than my possible. It's just like how we would define happiness or what love looks like. All these things are our own definitions. It starts with each of us. When I talk about live your possible, it's really connecting happiness and inclusion and embracing love that's around our world. Because there's actually in my book, there's actually eight steps that one could take that is actually spelled out possible. And it's the steps of really connecting with a higher purpose and having an open mind and going through the daily actions to actually reconnect back into your authentic self. And as you take these steps, you're not changing into someone else or what someone's telling you to be. You're actually defining what those possibilities look like as you go forward. And what happens is the experiences that I had and other people share with me is that you connect to something bigger than you. You invite the world in to things that are outside of yourself, knowing that you have trust and you have love within. And as you do that, guess what happens? You start connecting, things start popping. You start to see words you never thought of. You start to see things that you never thought were possible. Things you dreamt of now become reality. those are the possibilities that are sitting right in front of us, waiting to be found. And it's happening with folks that actually take these steps seriously and allow the silliness to come in at times too. Allow our childlike ways and wonderment to fill us up. As an example, might be silly or what have you, but this one-eyed smile that we were talking about a little bit, I see that in the world all over the place. I see it in nature. I see it in the sky. I see it on the beach. People are sending me pictures saying, "Hey, I found this and thought of you." And I said, "Well, what did it make you feel?" And everybody says to me, they lit up. They actually stopped and paused for a minute. They started to see that there is a connection in the world that's greater than themselves. When they start to do that, they start to get on this path of possibilities that will be filled with whatever it is that's important to them. And for me, it's helping to bring out the joy in other people. For me, it's making connections and friends that I never thought I would have had I not had my awakening, and to get through and break through some of the things that are holding me back. And it brings so much joy and love to me. It fills me up.
So is the journey more about discovering your possible and what that looks like?
It is exactly the journey is exactly the discovery, and actually welcoming what the findings are. Some of those are going to be silly. Some of those are going to be tough to see or tough to receive. Maybe you have to be vulnerable to change something that you believed in or something that you're doing. So these things are discoveries. These are elements of inclusion that we're willing to break down. So as I think about this, I always refer to this as open-minded curiosity. We're open-minded to see different things. When we're not, guess what? There's no new discoveries to be had.
Mm-hmm.
Once we're curious and open-minded, then we're actually willing to take in new perspectives. And then those discoveries turn into, I don't know, innovations. It turns into possibilities. It turns into new job opportunities. It turns into a willingness to step in and help out others rather than just really try to preserve my own self-being or my own workload. If you bring that to the workplace, or if you're doing something for the greater good, that means you're doing something with the team, not just for your own stuff. And there's just a lot of applications that could be leveraged, and people will become to see more clearly. Just things open up. Things are here and they're right in front of us. But if we don't take the steps or the actions or make the connections, we lose sight of those discoveries.
I think in the world that we currently operate in, we've given labels to a lot of things. And, D&I, DE&I, inclusion in general has become a very proper noun. It's become something that is, when you say it, it means very many different things to many different people. And I'm curious, you've brought up inclusion quite a bit in your summary. So how much of living your possible is in overcoming bias and inclusion, and how much of it is outside of that or in addition to that? I feel like you had your discovery at a D&I, I believe you said a D&I conference or a seminar. And so is this centered around lessons in inclusion, or is there more to it, or walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd say it's rooted in inclusion. Absolutely. I don't want folks to run away from what they might define inclusion might be because of what they've heard or what people have said. So I appreciate you calling that out, because to me, inclusion is an action, and it's a mindset, and it's not about taking away with something you might have. It's actually making something better and broader. And that's what this journey is all about. It's about expanding our mindset and our willingness to accept new things, accepting new findings or discoveries as it relates to differences, or putting two things together at the intersection of something amazing, which is something that Franz Johansson did in his book, The Medici Effect. It's an amazing book, but that's what he talks about, is finding these unexpected surprises at the middle of these two different things. And it's really taking those steps to be open-minded enough and curious enough to know that, hey, there's something really cool that could happen, that could be invented, or that I could be a better person. And it's just really incredible what companies are doing when they do that. You sprinkle in empathy, you sprinkle in actually a care or a level of love with other human beings. That's what this is all about. I feel like this is about giving humanity a chance where we actually get personal growth, where it's a two-way street. We all benefit. I think a lot of people think inclusion means I got to give up something, Instead of, instead of like I call FOLO, fear of losing out, you should be fearful of what you really are missing out on. When I was when I was avoiding inclusion and welcoming differences and all these things, I was missing out on amazing possibilities. I was missing out on happiness levels I never thought were even possible. I was missing out on meeting people in this world, all over the world. I was talking with a gentleman out in Denmark this morning, and we were talking about happiness at work over in those countries. It's fascinating. Why? Because I'm eager to learn. I'm eager to get it right, not be right. And it's one of those things. It's a mindset. It's a possible mindset. When we actually open up, so does our world.
Is it fair to say that your approach takes inclusion, which often is viewed on paper as something you do for others, and flipping it on its side and saying, hey, by including and doing having the act of inclusion, you are actually opening up your world and expanding your possibilities through it's almost a selfish thing in a good way?
Yeah, well said. When you say selfish, it's like it's an important thing for us to recognize where possibilities live. Call it, happiness and love and all those components, right? We're trying to make ourselves better. When we trust ourselves with that, we can actually start to invite the world in differently. We can actually trust the world differently. And exactly, so you hit the right word, is expansive. It's expansive. So if we're here, and for me, I had to have this awakening at this immersion event, this diversity inclusion event, where I recognized I was in this bubble, and it popped, it burst, and I thought the air I was breathing was gone. I was going to suffocate. I was going to be found out. And what I realized, Jeff, at that event is it actually expanded. The bubble expanded. It allowed me to put my arm around the world in a different way. Most importantly, though, the people that were at that event that I spoke to that day, there was a 4-day event. On the third day, I actually came in crying and upset, really sharing my pain, not looking for sympathy. Yeah, just I was really trying to share that I was trying to commit differently in the world. And what I noticed is that the people that I was pushing back actually held me up that day. It was the most powerful moment I've ever felt in my life. And it was my commitment to say, I'm going to continue expanding. And the irony of this one-eyed smile, if you look at it and maybe turn it this way a little bit, because there's a lot of meanings for this one-eyed smile, as you can imagine at this point, right? We're in that center. We're the eye of that smile. We're the eye of possibilities. And if you look at the smile, that's really an expansion of the world. You're putting yourself out there. You're reaching yourself out there. You're bringing people in. You're putting your armor out there with love, with saying, I don't have it just right. I want to help you be put on an equal playing field, or I want to help you have amazing results, or I want to help you get through this dark time. When we do that, when we give to others, we get so much back in return. So your word and use of selfishness is good, yet welcomed, in the way that we need to put ourselves out there, and we will get paid back. It's kind of, you've heard the whole phrase is expect what you get from putting yourself out there in a certain way. Expect what you reflect is the line. So when I put myself out there with joy, guess what happens? Most of the time I get joy back, not all the time. This isn't a perfect world. There's darkness, and there's days where people are rude to me, and I overcome it. And I know that I can, because I have, because it's built within me based on the steps I've taken, based on the trust I have in myself and in the world, based on the fact I don't need to have every answer. I was told I was supposed to have every answer up until about 7 years ago, right? I was told as a leader, I need to have all the answers. I can't bring people in to help me out. God, I couldn't have been further from the truth, even though I was having a lot of success, but I think it was at the expense of other people.
I think I use the term selfish liberally, but that's because I view it as not a bad thing. I think that the world, if we're honest, is selfish, and humans can be by nature, not in a terrible, evil way, but the what's in it for me is always going to be a question that crosses our minds. And so I think it's important. I think it's important, especially for the skeptics, for the blind, and the kind of the people who have not seen past their bias.
Yeah.
To be able to have a what's in it for me to get started, right?
Yeah, that's exactly spot on. And I have coached to this a bit with some companies on thinking about mentorship and allyship programs in a slightly different way. We're encouraging mentors and allies to step into the conversation differently, to not feel like it's a one-way street where they're just kind of giving you advice and telling people what to do. It's the opposite of that. It's a two-way street where you go in both as mentees, you're going to learn from each other. And when we do that, there's actually a different level of relationship and love that comes out of that. If you're allowed or willing to do that. And of course, we talk about love in a way that we actually care for humans in a more unique, special way with heart, serving with heart. And when we step into that conversation that way, anybody that wants to do that as a mentor, as an ally, as a sponsor, whatever label you want to give it, if you do it this way, I promise you, you're going to come out stronger. You're going to be different in the eyes of many people, including yourself. So it is selfish, because when we actually get a tie into who we really are authentically and who we can be, the world lights up in a different way. And so do the people around you, because we make it safe for others to do the same. We make it safe for others to come out as their best self. And maybe people will show up at work as their full self, or at least a version of their full self. Because a lot of things I had heard is people are actually changing the way they are. Maybe it's their hair, maybe it's their outfits, maybe it's their speech, just to fit in at work. That doesn't work for people to bring their full selves. People need to be accepted for who they are. And we have to embrace our differences, starting with our own. When we do that, we make it safe for everybody else to be who they are. And that's where discovery happens. That's where amazing outcomes actually transpire in the workplace. This is where we start to find transcendent joy wherever we are. And if it happens to be at work, even better.
I want to move us into a, let's just call it practical space. And I know you mentioned 8 things acronymed into possible. You don't have to go over all of them, but I'm curious if you can paint the picture for me of what this tangibly looks like to follow the steps, practice living your possible in the way that you outline. Like, what is that? What kind of actions does that really look like? Maybe highlight a few steps or a part of the journey.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think the first few are probably the most critical to get going, like anything, right? It's the first step you take and the small steps that you take. And the first 2 elements of the acronym possible, the first one is purpose-driven beliefs, and the second one is open-minded curiosity. So purpose-driven beliefs is really connecting with something that's bigger than yourself. What is your purpose? Maybe it's one word. Maybe the word is love. Like last year, my word of the year was love. How do you connect with that word? How do you connect with what you do, the decisions you make? And then along with that is, what are the inviting components of that? So if you have one word or it's a statement, like my statement, my purpose-driven belief statement is, I want to enlighten people to the light that's inside of all of us, so they can live their possible and they can be put on an equal playing field. So as I'm saying that and doing that every day, I'm inviting the world in. I'm a guy looking into you, Jeff, to say, you have this amazing light and everything you're doing. I can see it. I can feel it. I want to hear more. I want to see more. And if we go into those conversations, we move past the things that stopped us in the past. We have a greater purpose. We have greater meaning. And as we do that with our second step, we practice actions about being open-minded and curious, to say, I don't have it just right. I need to learn from Jeff. I need to hear more where he comes from, what lights him up. I need to be curious, because I'm going to take something away from this. I'm going to be better. I'm going to walk away in a different way. And the following steps are really some other actionable steps. Like the third is around skill sets. And the fourth is about really a strong resilience. So as we piece these together, we actually practice and reinforce components that will allow us to live our purpose, and also to be more open-minded. So reinforcing it, making it stronger. So as we're stronger, we're able to be more resilient. And then we're able to imagine and be brave with our authenticity, where the next couple steps. And then we make connections. We link connections, and endless possibilities start popping everywhere, because we've made that connection and leap from our bigger purpose. We're open-minded, and we're doing actions and developing skills along the way, that we're going to find joyful possibilities wherever we are. And it starts with those first few steps, and it works if we're genuinely caring about what we're doing, and we're doing this as part of our day. This isn't meant to be additional work. Like, oh my God, here's Darrin's asked me to do more work. No. In the book, there's actually over 100 practice actions for folks to think about. You probably only need to do 5 to 7 of these to feel the change we're talking about. In practicing these as part of your day, part of your day. Like, for example, to say, hey, I have this one word, purpose word, love. All that is the action is, let me connect to that throughout my day. How do I use that word more effectively, more intentionally, more purposely, and be aware of it. And guess what happens? It ends up being a part of who you are, and it brings out your authentic way of living. And then everything follows. It keeps building and building and building until you start to see things popping all around you.
It makes a heck of a lot of sense to me hearing you say all that. And, it moves me a lot. I want to address, though, I guess some people that I've met in my journey. I'm curious how you address starting from step one when you ask people to look for a higher purpose and they can't come up with anything beyond make money or amass wealth or whatever, you know, idea they might have around that. How do you, is that good enough? How do you move people through that beyond that in this journey? Because it seems like it's important to find that thing bigger than yourself. And some people struggle with that. Like what you said resonated deeply with me, but not everybody is in that part of the journey.
Yeah, it's true. There's so many people I talk with. They're in a results minded, I guess mindset, or results focused mindset, I should say. And a lot of folks, I just ask questions. I go back to the open minded curiosity step. I'm looking for that, like this side, this other person. I know this person's human. I got taught to make money and I needed to drive and provide for my family too. Yet it's not all about money. Something that I've had to learn over time. There's something bigger than that. So it's through inquiry. I'll ask people different questions. I'll ask questions like, where do you get joy from? What brings you happiness? What lights you up? What gets you really pumped up and excited? What are you passionate about? What does a good day look like? More often than not, there's a couple buzzwords that come out from there. Usually it's human related. It could be love, or it could be certain outcomes. Yet outcomes, as you probably know, in happiness studies, outcomes only give us about 10% of our happiness that's really lit up from within. More than half of our happiness comes from the steps we actually take. Because you always hear the phrase, hey, find joy in the journey. And everybody's like, yeah, whatever. But that's where that comes from. Because it's actually finding the love in the work we do that actually lights us up every single day. So that's what I try to get at, is say, what's lighting you up during the journey? Because that's what you need to do more of. Because the things that you probably want in addition to, if you're a company, you want to have business outcomes. Because I get a lot of skepticism about, well, I need to get results and I need to get them now. And I said, okay, I could talk to you about different use cases. Yet, what are your values? What are the values of your people? Do you live them, or are they just up on a wall on our website? Do you take these seriously? Like, these are the questions I'm asking. And generally, a lot of leaders are saying, I'm not sure how to tie those together. It's like, are you making decisions? Are you living by these? Are there stories that support these things? And generally, this is the type of work where leaders, if they step in and they ask for help from their people, and they do that with empathy and care to say, listen, let's just make up a value. Let's just say we want to be really good at inclusiveness. So then the work that's done is intentional and thoughtful with a greater purpose in mind. You're inviting your teams in. And when people do that, amazing work happens. There's more energy. There's better cultural awareness. There's better sharing. There's, guess what? Discoveries and innovation. That's what's happening when companies actually dive into this work too. And there are people that I'm talking with, different leaders, that I would say over the course of the last 5 to 6 years, initially were like, I don't even know where to begin with inclusion. I don't even know where to begin with taking care of my people the way you're talking about with servant leadership. I would say the pandemic has helped open the eyes a little bit. And unfortunately, some of the injustices that have happened in our world have also opened some eyes. And I'm trying to help people see, when they're ready, see that they're possible. And so is their organization to stepping in differently.
That's such a powerful and in some ways audacious kind of mission and statement. And I love it. I'm here for it. I feel like this is something that is honestly very hard. I feel like I hear you. And as much as I love it, I see also how much time and really investment, not time investment, but like time as in duration of change for a mindset, and effort as in intentionality and really commitment to doing something different. And I think that's what the world needs. I think we need missions and statements and objectives like this for the world to really move the needle in a new direction.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it is effort. I mean, change doesn't happen on its own. And if you're intentional about it, and if it's part of your every day, does it feel like work? If you're actually being the human being that you are, it should be easy. It should be. Granted, I know it's not, because I've been going through this journey myself, and I have to constantly remind myself about doing the work and the commitment. Like I know it's silly, but I have this pink pen that I committed to using the rest of my life, coming out of that diversity and inclusion event. And this, like, which have you ever seen like a white male leader, if you will, use a pink pen? And I've been in board meetings, executive meetings. I sign thank you notes. I sign love letters with this pen now. Because why? Because I want to be different to make a difference. And it's intentional. To some, it might sound corny, yet it's my reminder every single day. I got to live out my purpose, because there's a greater need out there than myself. And when I do that, I benefit, yet I see other people light up. When other people light up, I see other things happening with different companies and different individuals. And it excites me to do more and more and more all the time. And it takes effort. And I would ask the listener to say, hey, is it worth taking 1% of your day to change the rest of your life? So we're talking about practicing 15 minutes a day to start. That'll change the rest of your life. I promise you. If you do at least 15 minutes, you won't even realize this. It'll end up being who you are. So it'll become subconscious in a good way. You'll get to rewire your habits. You'll actually welcome happiness and joy in a different way. You'll see this one-eyed smile in the world and you'll laugh. Maybe you'll swear at it at first, but then you'll laugh to say you saw it. And it's there because it's unique. It's you looking out into the world saying, yes, I accept my uniqueness. Yes, I accept my joy that I'm going to bring out in the world. Because we often hide our joy and happiness because we're afraid that we're going to lose it. Or we're afraid to show that we have it because others don't. We have to stop being afraid of all of this. And it takes courage and vulnerability to take these steps. If we want to change the world, we got to do it together, but we got to start from within. And then when we connect the dots, it's pretty incredible what can and will happen.
Absolutely. Food for thought. And Darrin, I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing your story. It's an incredible mission, but just really inspiring me and the listeners. So thank you so much for that time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff. I appreciate everything you're doing.
Yeah. And listeners, if you want to hear the rest of the acronym, understand more about this, be sure to check out the Live Your Possible book that Darrin has written. And it's an incredible resource. It's got spaces built in, Darrin, you've put into this book that are like basically worksheets and activities and things that they can really actively, it's not a sit and read, but also work on yourself while you go book. And I think that's incredible. And it's such an invaluable resource for people. So I hope people get a chance to check that out. Live Your Possible. You can find that available where you find books, I assume. For the rest of us, thank you to everybody for tuning in as well. Check out our book, Love as a Business Strategy. If you haven't, I don't know why you're here. If you haven't, go check that out. Subscribe and rate the podcast. Leave reviews for both Darrin's book and my book, wherever you can. Let us know what you think. And, I'll leave with kind of a high note. I think, Darrin, you've really inspired me to kind of rethink as much as I constantly rethink. I think this is a great shot in the arm to kind of go and find out more of my possible, because I feel like I'm actually lacking in that after hearing you in this conversation. So you've inspired me today. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So thanks everybody. And we will see you all next week.